All right. All right, everybody, welcome to the May Seattle Chat. It's so good to see you. Um, I'm Beth Bardine and have a lovely group of people here that help out. I, throughout the evening, will put in this link, but if you have your phone handy, you can get the QR code for signing in. So in case you didn't hear me just say, please sign in. Membership and attendance is part of how we stay funded. And if you found us through Meetup, be sure to sign up for our newsletter and online community. You can find those on the website, seattlechad.com. And when you sign up on for the newsletter and fill out the survey, you get an invitation link for the Discord community. We don't share your information outside of Chad, and this is our amazing group of leaders. Denisa is our in-person events and immigrants experience group. She's working on building with Divya, and she manages our Art Marble in-person group. And Jessica Hespelt is our chapter co-coordinator along with me. She is also the support group leader for parents of kids with ADHD. Myself, Renee, who's speaking tonight, she is our support group leader for adults with ADHD. Um, Evan Moniz is also a support group leader for the adults with ADHD. And then Evan Nadav is our community manager and technology um, guru, and also our treasurer. All right, so I have just about the entire year set up for topics. Oh, I have June 5th twice. So we have Renee tonight, and then June 5th we have Kate Majau, and she her work is all about ADHD and toxic relationships. June 10th we have conflict resolution with Christine Scott. That one's I just learned all about that one earlier this week. August 7th is ADHD and money. September's is ADHD and nutrition. Still working on October's. And November 6th, we have an amazing panel of four organizing coaches. They are going to be discussing digital clutter, hoarding, move management, and more. So that one's going to be great. And no meeting in December. Chad and our speakers, we're here just to share our personal experiences. We can't diagnose or prescribe. And while we make recommendations all the time because it's from us personally as an individual with ADHD, we're not doing it professionally. So it's always important, take what you learn here and discuss it with your ADHD specialist team. All right. So tonight, I'm super excited. I've been talking to Renee about bringing this topic to Seattle Chad for months now, and she's a coach, an ADHD life coach. She used to be uh, a teacher. She midlife got her own ADHD diagnosis. She decided to become a coach. She's put in more than 2,700 hours of coaching. Um, the strategies that you will learn about tonight and the work that Renee does, um, everybody can use them. It's the type of things that we just didn't learn growing up. And it feels really good to have kind of a blueprint to know how to deal with some of this hard to deal with stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and excited to have Renee talk tonight, and I will turn it over to her. I'm going to stop. Oh, shit. And Renee, I will make you a co-host. There you go. Is everything working for you?
Yes,
Go ahead.
except, oh, there we go. Okay. Except I always forget I need to move the controls so I can see all of you. Okay, so recently I've noticed that sometimes there's floating controls like boxes. Are you seeing gray boxes over my presentation right now?
No, it
Okay, good.
looks great.
Okay, so this is me. Beth already did the introduction, so I don't really need to go more into that. But I am, yeah, love facilitating and teaching. Still pivoted to teaching adults and facilitating groups and educating and speaking about ADHD as often as I can, and but all focused on adults now. I was an elementary school teacher, but my purpose has now become and passion is to support other adults like me, a lot who are diagnosed late in life and didn't quite know why everything was so hard. So we're going to start with the definition of rejection. Webster's dictionary, noun rejection, the action of rejecting, the state of being rejected. Then there's also the biological rejection, immune response, in which a foreign object or tissue is transplanted and is attacked by the immune system. And finally, something rejected. So pretty simple, pretty basic, but not when it comes to our experiences with rejection. And my biggest impact, this rejection sensitivity, or at the time didn't know what the name for this, or that there was even a name for this for many, many years, was one of my most devastating symptoms and or like traits, or I don't even know if traits is really technically the right term, but really a symptom, even though it's not in the diagnostic criteria for ADHD. It is deeply experienced by nearly everyone I've ever met who's had ADHD to some degree. So I recently came across this sort of a way of thinking about rejection, and I thought it was really fascinating. I had a conversation with a colleague of mine about our differences and how we experienced rejection differently, and he said something that made me really curious to just divide it up into these three different areas. So I'm going to just briefly say from our perspective, there's probably more, but these were some of the three that we discovered sort of as we were talking about rejection. The first one that was surprising when he talked about it was really this feeling of existential rejection. Nothing ever works for me. I don't fit in anywhere. Sort of this sense of not belonging, sense of being outside of what everybody else is expected or is experiencing. And it can be so deeply experienced that we really truly don't know what to do with ourselves or how to identify. And with ADHD as a late life diagnosis, it also comes with so many feelings of, oh wait, is this me or is this my ADHD? Is this my personality? Am I, or if I treat this, am I going to lose my personality? There's so many things that come up with ADHD. But when we have existential feelings of rejection, anytime it's so deep, we don't feel like there's anything that's going our way, everything's backwards or sideways, or just nothing's going well. The next one that we talked about was perceived rejection. And this is the one that I hear about the most often, and the one that I think I've experienced more than any other. As an example here, I haven't heard back from Kyra since I sent the text suggesting what movie I wanted to see and ideas for restaurants. They must not want to go with me. So we have this making meaning out of an experience. So someone not responding to our message, meaning that they must not want to spend time with us. We're going to talk more about these. So I want you to be thinking about these as we go through them and see what triggers for you, what thoughts come up when you think about these experiences. And finally, the one that we came up with was explicit rejection. I don't think we should see each other anymore. So it literally could be a true rejection. Someone says, I want to break up with you. I don't want to be in a relationship with you. Or you get fired from a job, for example. Or, when there's an explicit rejection. But we're going to talk more about what happens in our head when these kinds of things happen, what we feel in our bodies, what we feel, what our thoughts spiral into, the crazy and amazing and elaborate stories that we can create connected to these experiences. So I'm going to talk next about, I wanted you guys to take a second, and if you can, grab a piece of paper or your phone or something, and maybe if you want to, just capture it in the chat. When we think of rejection, I want you to take note of an experience that you have had that was related to existential rejection. Can you think of a time when you felt like you didn't belong anywhere, or that your life was just falling apart, that nothing ever works out for you, you have the worst luck on the planet? Maybe write down a couple of words that will help you remember it. Okay, we're going to move into the next one. So back to perceived. So when you thought something meant that someone's non-reaction, non-response, or their comment or their tone, the way they looked at you, the way they walked past you, any kind of experience that you had that you read as or felt that you had been rejected. They didn't like you, they didn't love you, they didn't want to be with you anymore, they weren't interested in spending time with you, they thought you weren't very smart. I don't know, anything that you had an experience of that could be considered perceived rejection, that other people might have seen it differently than you did. And take note of it. So maybe make a couple of notes, a few words or a sentence that reminds you later what that experience was. Maybe the name of the person. Or the environment. Okay, and finally, explicit. Times you have experienced explicit rejection. Somebody said something that couldn't be perceived, or that you believe couldn't be perceived in any other way besides rejection. And if you haven't, maybe write on the paper, like if you didn't already, write the category. So existential. If you don't have one for all of these, that's totally fine. But if you did, just maybe label them so which one you perceived as existential, or the one that you believed is existential rejection, which one felt like perceived rejection, and which one was explicit. Okay, I'll give you about 15 more seconds. Okay, oops, did my view change? Are you guys seeing other slides or still my main slide? I hit a button and I don't know what it did.
We see the other slides.
Okay, so I moved out of. Oh.
There we go.
Okay. All right, so now the problem with this is I can't see the chat or anything else. So, okay, next. So you can set that aside. We're going to talk about some things, and these, you'll see some repetition, so spoiler alert, and that's on purpose. So we're going to talk just real briefly. I don't want to spend as much time on this. I told Beth I think I'd really like to skip into, or jump to as quickly as we can, into your experiences and do maybe some mini coaching, talk through some of these scenarios, maybe see if we can work through kind of, what do we do about this? What is it that because we kind of, some people have a lot of familiarity with it, some of us don't. So I'm going to go through these a little bit quickly, and then I want to get to the next part, which is the doing part, the understanding,
Yeah.
the deeper dive. Okay. So common triggers for existential rejection or other types of rejection could be, when we are dealing with judging ourselves, that we don't measure up, that we're comparing ourselves to other people's expectations, or sorry, to our own expectations, which can be unreasonable, extremely high. We tend to lean toward extreme examples of or extreme expectations of ourselves, and then sometimes of others. So we may expect a lot from other people and not realize that they may not be, that might not be reasonable. And this can trigger some specific rejection sensitivity when we compare as well. We also can experience it if other people are making comments about ADHD that are uneducated, and that can make statements like fact, that there's, people with ADHD are X, Y, and Z. And then you start to feel like, oh, I can't be here, or only people with ADHD never finish college, or people with ADHD could never be a doctor. Things like that, that make us believe that our dreams or our thoughts might not be accepted, because people are making other statements that are not true, are not factual, and not based in any kind of other experience, but they might believe to be true. Next, family members, partners, friends, employers, coworkers could also create existential sort of rejection for us when we think about not belonging in a specific work environment, especially when we learn we have ADHD, or when we have challenges in the workplace that are not being addressed, or we don't know are related to our ADHD. I already talked about this, comparing to ourselves. People making comments and jokes and criticisms can be perceived as rejection. It can be very hard to tolerate. And finally, when we're given feedback, sometimes it can be even constructive. So common triggers for perceived rejection, there's even, some of these are the same, but we can also be, it can be triggered by the perception or possibility of somebody rejecting us. We could be thinking that they're going to reject us, so we can end up actually walling ourselves off and closing ourselves off to other people and relationships. We're going to talk more about that later, but we can, the risk of someone withdrawing love, affection, respect, or appreciation from us, just based on an experience we've had with them or a tone, we may believe that this is going to happen. We can also, the same thing I mentioned before, this is another duplicate on purpose, that we are measuring ourselves against other people's expectations or others' expectations of us. More uneducated people, family members, comparing ourselves, and then feedback. All of these can be actually read as rejection from our own perceptions or experiences rejection. And finally, the explicit uneducated people, again, family members, again, comments, criticism, jokes, they may actually say hurtful, mean, untrue, harsh things about us. There may be causes to relationships, breakups from relationships, that they are saying is due to our ADHD, and blaming that on everything on our ADHD or on our failings, as opposed to them being traits and symptoms of ADHD that should be seen as serious challenges, and that are not things that we are willfully doing to be difficult or cause problems in our relationships. So this is another, I pulled some definitions of rejection sensitivity from a couple of different places, but this one just in summary: experience of being more prone to anticipate, perceive, and react to rejection. This is also due to increased actual experiences of judgment, criticism, and scrutiny. As people with ADHD, we experience criticism and correction and harsh comments and judgment and discrimination at rates much, much higher than the average population or the neurotypical population. And as children receive a lot more credit or corrections and redirections, and get into a lot more trouble and have a lot more criticisms as children. And I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but it's diabolically high. And finally, experienced across different diagnoses, several different diagnoses, not just ADHD. So it's rejection sensitivity. And if you haven't noticed, I am saying rejection sensitivity instead of rejection sensitive dysphoria or RSD. And that's on purpose. So all of these things, rejection sensitivity is actually experienced by a lot of different people with a lot of different diagnoses. Even though, again, it's not in the criteria for ADHD, but it is actually, or variations of it are in other diagnoses. And I tried to create a slide that showed some interesting comparisons between other mental health diagnoses and or developmental diagnoses that are in the DSM that mention rejection or rejection sensitivity. And the formatting got so awful, I decided not to include it. And I didn't come up with a better way to show the data, but there are different, forms of anxiety, because rejection sensitivity is experienced often as anxiety or as a form of anxiety. There's actually a diagnosis of social anxiety or generalized anxiety. It can be in personality disorder, in the personality disorder category. It can be in the mood disorder category of bipolar and other diagnoses, depression as well. And so it's experienced by a lot of people, and rejection is one of the most existential threats to human beings of all kinds. We are wired for connection and belonging, and we literally have visceral reactions to the risk of or the fear of being set outside or put outside the cave, so to speak, as they used to say. It would cause actual death at that point. Being excommunicated from a community was literally life-threatening, and that's why our bodies are so viscerally responsive to perceived threats or actual threats. Our brains can't actually tell the difference between a perceived threat and an actual threat, especially when we've experienced it so many times over and over. I'd love to get some scans. I haven't seen some recently, but in a few years ago, I saw some comparisons of brain scans of people who were in threatening situations or experienced threatening situations, and people who were just talking about them or seeing them. And it was almost indistinguishable at that time. I haven't seen any newer studies on this, that the brain was lighting up in pretty powerful ways. So I think the reason I'm sharing that, one of the main reasons I want to share that, is to normalize how deeply painful this is for most people. So we're going to talk more about what we can do about that, but also just know it's hard stuff. It's deep stuff, and it's not easy to manage, and it can be impacting so many parts of our lives, but it can be managed. It can be improved. And so we're going to talk about that. So, I forgot about this part. I added this just as like the physiological feelings, the actual, how your body might feel this and or experience rejection. So some of these are just, kind of overwhelming feelings of shame. Shame is an emotion, but that's something, so it's not just a physiological thing. I mixed these together. But emotional flooding is another experience where you are just completely overwhelmed with emotions and not being able to, feeling like you're drowning in them. You can feel tightness in your chest. You can feel flushing in your face. You can have butterflies, that feeling of that could be excitement, but it also could be anxiety or rejection or nervousness. They can feel the same in our bodies. So that can be a little confusing until we add meaning to those feelings, is when we have problems. So we're going to talk about that. So in extreme cases, it also can turn into depression and panic attacks if we have unmanaged, untreated, continuous rejection or feelings of rejection. Then experiences of rejection, it can turn into major depressive disorders over time, and panic attacks if it's not treated or managed. So behaviors you might see, or things you might have people might do. You might see people-pleasing behavior. You can see people withdrawing, staying at home, hiding, literally hiding, but also emotionally hiding, masking. It can be experienced or can be used as a strategy to protect ourselves. These are all protective measures. So these aren't judgments. These aren't, I don't even like the people pleasing. I need to come up with a better name for that. But because these come with so much negative stigma, it's hard for us to not have this visceral emotional reaction to even just these words. So I'm aware of that, and I acknowledge that. And I'm sorry I didn't warn you before I started jumping into all this. But we can start turning down social engagements or invitations to protect ourselves from potential rejection. So we just don't go, because we don't want to risk being having hurt feelings or having somebody say something that we don't that doesn't feel good. Whether it's a true risk or not, that's what we're going to talk about. Negative self-talk. Lots of things, stories in our head, names in our head, name calling. What's wrong with you? Why are you so sensitive? So we're going to talk some more about these examples. Some people experience externalized rejection sensitivity, where there may be rage or outbursts, emotional eruptions, where they can be experiencing hostility, look angry and hostile, defensive. And then we can get to the point of actually pushing people away emotionally, turning on, creating conflict in relationships, to distance people, to protect ourselves. We're just going to push them away before they can hurt us. We can isolate, again, spending time alone, but we can also emotionally isolate by withholding information about ourselves, not being open and vulnerable, not sharing things about ourselves because it just feels too risky, too dangerous. We can stop trying. So if we have been rejected or have a feeling of rejection over and over and over again, we may just stop trying to make friends, or stop trying to reconnect with people, stop reaching out, because it's just too hard and too painful. So we just end up disconnecting and becoming truly isolated in certain moments or in certain situations in our lives. So if you recognize this in yourself or anybody else, it's probably likely that they're experiencing some kind of feelings of rejection and are trying to protect themselves. So I'm going to go through these one more time, and I'm going to give you some questions that you can ask yourself. So we're going to practice some of these a little bit later, but so what it might look like. So first of all, if people pleasing might be a thing, you could ask yourself, what's important about pleasing others? Why does it matter? Another one that's new to me and I've been trying to use a lot in my life is, why should I care? Why should I care what they think? Why should I care if they like me or not? And it's not always effective, but it can be. It really can help me a lot to realize that, I shouldn't be so worried about what the person at the grocery store thinks of me that I took too long to put my wallet away. Should I really care about what she thinks of me? Should I really worry about the person behind me in line? Am I ever going to see them again? What are we hiding from? This one's a deeper, harder one. It could be helpful to uncover. So if we decide we find ourselves hiding a lot, this could be a good question to ask ourselves. And it could get to the deeper thing that we need to address so that we can stop hiding if it's keeping us from making connections, if it's keeping us from the life we want to live. If we're turning down social engagements or invitations, what about that feels easier than saying yes? Again, this could get to the core of what our fear might be, or what our worry might be, or what our previous experiences might have created for us in these patterns. Negative self-talk. Stop and actually ask yourself, what am I saying? What am I saying to myself? Many of us don't actually stop and pay attention. When my clients come to me to work on negative self-talk, often they don't even realize it's a thing that they're doing, but it comes up. They don't actually have any idea what they're saying to themselves. Or that it's negative, actually, or that it's harmful. I have had so many interesting conversations with clients trying to defend some of the things they say to themselves. And I'm like, I don't know, but if I said that to you, I would feel pretty crappy about myself. I don't think that sounds very nice. That's interesting. Huh. Okay, have you said that to anybody else? So we're kind of checking on that language. Or just the tone even of some of these words. They'll be laughing when they say it, but there's kind of this knife edge in it, that it's that laugh is sort of our protection, but it may not be truly, we may not be aware of the impact of what we say to ourselves or what we're even saying. So just pausing to ask ourselves, that can be really important in this journey. If you're experiencing rage or emotional eruptions, so what's pushing that button for you? So people who experience road rage, the things that they say, like if somebody cuts you off, I guess you could consider that a rejection of the space in the road. Like, you have removed me from that space. That was my space. Why are you, who do you think you are? If we pay attention to the words that come up, the beliefs that come up, the things that we say out loud when we experience rage, or say in our heads, it could be out loud or in our head, it gives us can give us really clues to what the button, what the tender spot is, where the raw spot is, that we may have a belief that that people don't, one of my, we're going to talk some more about other examples from you, but one of my clients had his button was the perception that he wasn't intelligent or smart or skilled at his work. So anytime anybody asked him questions about what he was doing, he read it as, they don't think I know what I'm doing, instead of them just having a curious question. So we're going to talk more about that. It's a deep, and it doesn't get uncovered usually right away, but it may be a couple of layers down, but it's also important to look. Hostility. What's feeding the hostility? What are you angry about? These are some questions that we can ask ourselves too for that. Defensiveness. What are you defending? This one was really powerful and took me off guard, and took some of my clients off guard too. Like, we don't realize what we're actually defending. And if we get deep and real, we actually are defending something different than we think we're defending usually. So we can ask this question multiple times, like any of these questions, to kind of get deeper and deeper into this. And if you're pushing people away or distancing yourself or isolating, what feels safer about being alone? So if there's answers to that question that bring up something you weren't aware of, that could be really important to look at. Okay, so these are some prompting questions that we can ask ourselves, or we may need someone else to ask us. You may need to experience this in another, a safe partnership or relationship, and we're going to talk a little bit. Oops, one more, sorry. Stop trying and you're disconnecting. So what's safer about giving up or disconnecting from others? Another deeper question. Okay, so what can we do about it? We're going to practice later, but this is some of the things that we can do. First of all, you can find a coach that is an expert in this and or understands ADHD, that understands rejection sensitivity. And this is really, really important, because general coaches, the coaches who haven't been trained in ADHD or deeply in emotional dysregulation and other challenges of ADHD, will really misread this as a confidence issue or as self-esteem problems. And it could be, and they could be connected to this and deeper issues. But they're going to miss the mark on this one, and they're going to miss the point of what the experience of rejection sensitivity in a person with ADHD and or other neurodivergence or other diagnoses. The next thing that you can do is challenge your own assumptions. I call this calling BS on your thoughts. So, the things that we think, we need to not believe everything we think, because they are absolutely created by our experiences, our beliefs, our experiences, our stories, what other people have said to us, what we've seen, what we've heard other people say, what other people do or say. So just make sure that you're challenging your own assumptions. And those other questions from the previous slide are ways of doing that, but also we can use humor in this. We can, I laugh out loud at some of the stuff now, like to myself, that I used to cry over, because I've taken the sting out of it now. And I know that the things I'm thinking are not always accurate in the situations I'm applying them to. They can be accurate, but it can be mislabeling, and or we're going to talk more about how we can trust ourselves too. That's a big question that many people wonder about is, well, if I'm making up stuff, then how do I know, or how do I deal with when people are actually those explicit rejections, right? Like, how do I deal with when somebody's actually being hurtful, mean, or rejecting me? That's real. I'm not making that up. And what I'm saying is that it's not really about making it up. It's just about maybe applying meaning to a situation that hasn't warranted that meaning or that response. Collecting the evidence to the contrary. This is the biggest one, and I have to tell you a quick story about one of my clients. She was young, my youngest client. She was 19 at the time, or maybe 18 even at the time, and this topic came up, and she kept talking about all the things she was saying about herself, and we were talking about collecting evidence, and she said, when you say that, I get this visual. And she's very visual, which many of us are, very artistic and very creative, as many of us also are. And she started sketching something in her book. She doodled all the time and had these really cool images. And so I could see that she was drawing, and she held it up and showed it to me. And it was this person that was kind of stereotypically looked like a lawyer carrying a briefcase. And there was the scales of justice really out of balance. And she said, I'm going to call this my shitty lawyer who's collecting, negative evidence, and I'm going to try to, come up with a contrary argument to this awful lawyer. And sorry, I know other people who are lawyers. It was just, she said this image, so no offense intended, but she was seeing this experience of collecting evidence that was all negative. I said, well, so where's the good stuff? So she came up with I don't even remember what she called her I guess you would call her the superhero of this story. Like, it was her, but like, what, I can't, she drew herself with a cape, and she drew something else, but I don't remember what she named herself. But that person, that version of her persona, was going to be collecting the positive evidence to contradict all those negative statements. And so we worked on creating reframes and positive statements to counteract all these negative statements, and not just things we make up, because we as ADHDers have many of us have a real awareness of or ability to catch when people aren't being authentic or real with us. And so we can kind of, I don't know, it's a deep value, and we generally can tell when people don't mean what they say. And so she needed to come up with, we needed to collect, and we all need to collect real evidence. And sometimes we need other people for this. Often we need other people to help us with this. So we're going to talk about collecting that evidence a little bit later with examples. Mindfulness, deep breathing, super helpful. And mantras and or saying some reaffirming statements that are, there's a, kind of, we have some, the kind, all of a sudden I lost the name of it. I have notes on this. Why am I not looking at them? Self-compassion practice. There's mindful self-compassion practices. Kristen Neff has this amazing self-compassion mindfulness meditation. It's guided. So you listen to someone, and then you say these different self-affirming statements, and then you repeat them, and then you're thinking about and changing your energy. So it's not just about breathing, but it's also about looking at what we're saying to ourselves and changing our bodies and turning on our parasympathetic nervous system. That parasympathetic nervous system is what brings us down into rest and digest, makes it when we feel safe and our body functions come back online, and we can think and we can feel and we can digest food literally, and do all of those things. So it's extremely important to figure out how to calm our nervous systems down, and this is one of the ways. Therapy can be super important because many of us have traumas that contribute to these experiences of rejection sensitivity. Again, these are the real experiences we've had, but we've become hypervigilant, or we've become overprotective, and it's no longer serving us anymore. It's creating problems and harm and distance and disconnection in our lives. So we may need to go to a therapist to work on this. And for me, that was one of the most powerful ways to discover and to reframe these experiences and do some healing work around some of the deep issues that were triggering or interconnecting to my some of my rejection sensitivity that was outside of ADHD. And then medications. There are some physicians who are prescribing medications that can help turn down the intensity of the, and this is more likely in when people are experiencing rejection sensitive dysphoria. So to the level of impact that it is deeply impacting our lives and being able to function and show up in the world and or our mood. And there could be other medications that can help treat that as well. But I am not a doctor, so I'm not going to go into deeply into the medications, but that is, there are some effective medications for some people who experience this on a very, very deep level. Okay, oops, that's not what I want. I'm gonna stop this part. That was a different slide. Don't know how that ended up in there. I want to check in on your list. So I'm going to pause, and I did a lot of talking, and even I can know that I didn't pause. I'm supposed to put pause slides in there. I'm so sorry. When I start talking about these things I'm excited about, I can tend to talk. Hopefully I didn't talk too fast, but I can tend to talk fast and not breathe. So I'm going to pause and check in with all of you. I want to stop. Actually, I might need to show you that slide again. Let me know if it would be helpful. We're going to go back to the slide that's talking about the 3 different kinds of rejection and your experiences with it. If you raise your hand or somebody come off mute, let me know if you'd like for me to put that slide back up so that you can see it while we talk about the 3 different kinds and hear some of your examples. I would love, I would be more than happy to do that. So let me know. Okay. No, we're okay without it. All right. Yes, Beth, I see your note. That's great. I couldn't see the chat. All right, so the first one, the first existential rejection experiences. How many of who had an example of existential rejection that you are willing to share with us, either out loud or in the chat? Have you had a time when you didn't feel like you belonged or that things were never going your way? Or if you just can relate to that, if you feel free to use your raise hand, the raise hand feature, if you have that, or an actual hand. Okay. 2 people who have experienced that. Okay. Can anybody think of an example, a different example of existential rejection that I didn't share that you'd like to share with all of us? It may not be your own experience, but it could be somebody else's. Thank you, Phil. He said, I was laid off from a job that I never felt explicitly included. Yeah, okay. Any other experiences, so specifically when any times when we haven't felt included? So what are some examples of things that have us feel excluded?
Okay, I'll expand on mine a little bit
Oh,
more.
great. Thanks, Phil.
This is Phil. So the job that I was laid off from, I came into secondarily because I sat next to them and I started doing some work that was adjacent, and then I did some work that was aligned, and then I just kind of ended up on the team, and it was just the kind of the it was never anything explicit, but it's how I process when I don't hear a hey Phil, why don't you come with us? Then I wasn't invited.
Okay.
It's
Great.
just it's that you have to I respond better to direct, especially when I'm in a situation where I'm not comfortable. I respond better to a direct comment or direction or guidance, something that's explicit, and it was I kind of started just inviting I eventually said, hey, can I come to lunch with you guys? They're like, well, yeah. I mean, oh, excuse me. When I first joined the team, there was a row of about a dozen desks, and I sat on another row next to them. And then we did some reshuffling of desks, and I sat on the row on the other side of them. So I'm still feeling like I'm second class to the original core team. And so it was one of those, and then I finally came into the row and I felt better about it, but it was still the kind of the lingering doubt. And then of course, November of last year, I just got laid off. There was 2 of us who were laid off, and we were both late arrivals to the group. So it's just very, you know, hmm. I'm not a conspiracist, and there's no such thing as coincidences, kind of thing. So it's just that's I've been struggling with that for the last 6 months.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much. That's really helpful. Okay, see in the chat here. For existential, oh yeah, okay. So David, for existential rejection, I always thought this was because of I'm prone to getting depressed quickly or something, immediately concluding I suck. That's rough. I'm not made for this because there was a minor setback. Yes, thank you. That's another example. Yeah, not made for this. I've had an aha moment now thinking, wow, that's all rejection, possibly even rejection accumulated over a period of time causing depression. Oh, Divya, that's huge. That's amazing. Yeah, it's awful and powerful all at the same time. Thank you so much for putting words to that. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. I think that's amazing. And um, yeah, I'm going to put myself on pause for a second and then read the next one. I felt that I was excluded from friendships at work because I was a foreigner, yet the nurse practitioner said that I was weird too. Did the weird comment come first, Margarita? And then the feeling of maybe I wasn't being included comes second? I wonder. Okay. And especially, and related to this too, with work stuff, you guys are giving all the work examples, which is very interesting to me too, is that when a colleague of mine and I are writing a presentation about trauma in the workplace and how many of us have experienced like full-on PTSD from previous work experiences. And we carry this stuff with us, right? So from previous environments, we can bring these fears and worries with us, and then it impacts how we read, filter, and or experience anything similar or adjacent even to some of those things. So this is super important to look at and be curious about. I was thinking of welcoming work environments where there isn't explicit rejection, but something about the culture. It's easy to feel that way in remote work environments. Oh, for sure. Thanks, Paige. When you're not even in an experience in a specific environment, many people experienced this during COVID when they were alone or at home or started jobs at home. They felt completely disconnected from their colleagues. It was very interesting and very challenging for so many people. And then some people actually loved it because they didn't have any of the office politics from previous experiences. But any new hires or other people who had changes in environment found it challenging. Okay, thanks, Margarita, for clarifying. After she came to me, and then another person said the same thing after her, I felt really, yes. Oh, unbelievable. Yeah, understandably, Margarita. Okay, so we're going to move on to the, Eric, your hand is up. Is it from before, or did you have something to add? I'm sorry, you're hiding behind my controls.
I put something in the chat. I think I was the first one, and I don't know that you spotted it.
Nope, I didn't. I'm sorry. What was it?
So and I rather than type it again, I put up my hand
Oh, I see it.
like you invited us to do.
I
I
did.
live in a big condo complex with 360 units, two buildings, a north and a south. There used to be a gentleman that would show movies on Thursday nights, and it was pretty popular. About 20 people would show up, and it was mainly over 55 in the building, a lot of retired people, and they would enjoy the movie, but there would be this grumbling. Oh, gee, this is really ending late. This is almost past my bedtime and dinner time. So some time went by, and I talked to the guy that ran the evening meeting, and I said, how about if I show a matinee one day a week? So I picked another day, and I got permission from the manager and everybody in the little condo board to do a matinee showing at 1:30. And I was all excited about this and whatnot. And I did it for 2 years in a row. And mainly, for mostly all these weeks, there'd be two regular people show up beside me
Mm-hmm.
and there's 360 units, and it's mostly couples.
Okay.
And I said, where are all these people in the evening that were complaining, oh, gee, I wish it was at a different time?
Uh,
And I hung in there for 2 years doing this. I would advertise it. I would make the announcement, make these flyers and announcements. It would be on the official bulletin boards in 8 different places. And I ended up making two good best friends. I even provided free popcorn and snacks and candies,
awesome.
whatnot. And I stopped a while ago, a year or so ago, and because and to go to the movie, you had to go right by the pool. The common room was, and people would be laying out by the pool by the half a dozen and 10 people. And to go in to show the movie, I'd look at these people just laying in the sun. I'm in Florida, by the way, so
Yeah. Oh,
I'm
that's
out of
yeah,
state.
amazing.
So, it kind of, I don't know if this quite fits into one of these rejection categories. Maybe it's the perceived I put,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
and it's not the biggest deal in the world.
Yeah.
I became best friends with my two regulars and stuff, which
That
was a
sounds like some great
positive. But
outcomes from
but
it.
mainly I was a little bothered. I don't know if I had rejection syndrome full blown, but you had asked for an example and I came up with that one. I don't know,
Yeah,
you
we're
know.
gonna. I'd love to talk more about when we go. We're not gonna get to go through all of them, but I would be curious, yeah, to ask some more questions about that. So I'm gonna pause for a second and
All
check in.
right.
Are there any more?
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more examples of perceived rejection? I see some other great stuff. Oh, I guess we jumped into because we were in existential. Yeah, moving to perceived. Oh, I missed some stuff in the chat. Oh my goodness. Of course I did. Um,
And that's okay because it's impossible to pay attention to all the things at once.
yeah. Oh, Evan's example. Okay, I was just reading yours. Okay, drumline was a big part of my life in high. I was in the color guard. That was my life. But the 2 years I was in marching band in college, I feel like for reasons I can't quite articulate, I didn't fit in with the rest of the drumline, and it was uncomfortable and filling me with self doubt. So yeah, I mean, oh yeah, these are great examples too. Another great example, and we're gonna. So any of you who giving me examples, and sorry, I missed Paige's goodbye. Goodbye, Paige. Picture gone now. I would love to have, if any of you feel comfortable, stepping up to sort of have us talk through one of these scenarios and kind of dig deeper into it. Beth, how much time do I have left? I always lose track of the time. 20?
About 28 minutes.
Okay. Oh, yay. All right. So the next one, when says, okay, I didn't see Chelsea's. When asked a question, you feel attacked like somebody else is behind the question. Yes. The question where there really isn't, and that causes rage. Would this be considered? Yeah, it can be, Chelsea, for sure. A level of rejection sensitivity. Would this be considered rejection sensitivity? Yeah. And where this is a prime example that we can dive into as well. So, right, and if you guys put stuff in the chat and you don't want me to ask you specific questions, I can dive into it a little deeper, but it'll be a lot easier and better if somebody does step up in just a minute to be a volunteer. Okay, so the last one was explicit. So explicit rejection. We had a couple, like maybe one example. I mean, no, actually, no, we haven't had any examples yet of explicit rejection. So can you guys share some explicit rejection examples? And then we're going to go into practicing. Oh, Sarah, yeah. I had a narcissist friend who would make a point of not inviting me to group things right in front of my face, kept the peace because she was a friend. I might argue that maybe she wasn't. Yeah, because you had friends in quote. Yeah, I would agree with that. We'll talk more. We can talk more about that too. Yeah, that stinks. Okay, so yeah, right in front of your face, not inviting you. Okay, any other examples? And also feel free to come off mute if you can't. Oh, ouch. Yeah. I was in a relationship and was completely discarded one day, no explanation. Rough. Yeah. Oh, sorry that happened to you. What can you tell me what the last sentence means there? Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, goodness. Yes. What narcissistic personality disorder is. Yeah, I had to deal with my own toxic personality too, actually. It was very, very hard. Yeah, it is really devastating. Knife to the heart. Great example, Sarah. Okay, so, all right, so no other examples of that. That's okay if we don't have any right now, but we'll talk about it. Okay, so does anybody in these examples, I mean, part of me wants to pick somebody because I think it's a really great example for everyone. Maybe I'll do that, and if you want to say no, you can. Oh, two. Two ignorant, no, not ignorant questions. Curious questions. They're curious questions. This talks make it sound as if sensitivity is significantly more learned than inborn, and I'm hearing, yeah, it actually is. Um, I mean, yes and no. There's we're wired for protection. So I'm going to state this one more time. Is sensitivity, or repeat this, is sensitivity significantly more learned than inborn? I would say yes, and in my experience, that's been true because, but we are wired for protection, like I said. So our brains are literally wired over generations, and there's some newer epigenetic research or findings in how our parents' traumas can be carried over in genetic markers, and so it also can become carried over in responses to behaviors, but those are also heavily learned. So there's a mix of both, that we're wired to protect ourselves from rejection as human beings. So there is that piece, because it's really our drive to stay alive and to stay connected keeps us alive. Then it's a really deep primal thing. But we become more sensitive and have more overvigilance and or more expressing or experiences of rejection and expressions of rejection because of things we've learned in our lives and experienced and witnessed. What can somebody do on the receiving end of sensitivity? Are there ways? Yes. So we're going to talk about that. De-escalate. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that perspective too. Okay. Yeah. So yes, Lauren, there are. So we're going to practice a little bit of that. And I'm going to sort of teach as I talk through one of these. So we're going to get a little deeper in some of these. All right. Oh, sorry. Back to the example. I got myself distracted already with the, where did it go? I lost it in the chat. I should have written it down. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna pause and I'm gonna ask for a volunteer instead because I can't find the one I was gonna. Oh, it was Chelsea. When asked a question, you feel attacked. It's right. I scrolled right to the end of it. When you're asked a question, you feel attacked, like something else is behind the question when there really isn't, and what that causes rage. So, would you be willing to talk to us about that? A specific example that's happened, or would you like me to kind of do that with somebody else, or just explain on my own?
I think I can give kind of a general one.
Okay.
So like that happens in my house sometimes.
Okay.
So it could be like, hey, oh, I didn't know there was this or that in the refrigerator left over to eat for dinner. And then the other person might say, yeah, I made that. I was going to eat it. And if you want me to eat something else, then just tell me, or something like that. Like kind of like a combative type response when it was only a question.
Okay.
And so and then the feeling was that there was something else behind that, like this shouldn't be sitting here. It's been sitting here too long. You need to eat it up or something like that, and don't waste food and blah blah. When really it was an honest question of like, oh, I didn't know this was in here, and there was nothing else behind the question. It was just a question, but past experiences have made the person feel like there might be a loaded question or something really small, general like that.
Okay. Well, I would say that that's probably not small in a couple of different ways. So I'm going to talk about that for a second. So first, I wanted to note your words. So I want to, for each of us to be, as we think about these examples and experiences that we have, that again, like I said, those questions that we ask ourselves, but really the words we use when we answer those questions are really important. They matter. So something I noticed in what Chelsea said is she said there are feelings behind those questions, but I think it wasn't exactly what you said. I tried to write it down, but but what they actually were beliefs. So you said, don't waste food, it's going to spoil. Those aren't actually feelings, right? Those are experiences. Those are I mean, beliefs. They could be true. They might not be. Whoever that person is, not you, Chelsea, specifically, but the person who is having those thoughts or reactions is having feelings, but they're actually connected to those beliefs, right? So when we have thoughts in our head, they create visceral automatic responses in our body. So when we have in the past been asked questions, so I have had clients come to coaching, a few, not too many, but a few, who had a lot of defensiveness around me asking questions. And one finally was, I see this as a celebration, because there was enough safety in that relationship that they said to me, why do you ask so many questions? And I said, well, that's my job. It's kind of the definition of coaching, is asking questions. And it became this really deep, long conversation where I had to unpack and uncover with this person sort of what about questions was so not okay, and then, get words and names to it. So, and there was real, if you can imagine, and hopefully you're seeing the potential, that there was really good reason for this person to feel defensive about questions. They had experiences of feeling interrogated by a partner who was abusive. And so there was interrogated, and actually a parent. There was this long history, and this is where the trauma stuff can come in. So I'm kind of delving into the boundary here, that there's deep reasons behind them, but they can also be handled without going into deep therapy around these things. So we can see that there's patterns for different reasons. And this person's pattern was around being criticized, judged by questions. And they could be explicit, or they could be passive aggressive, or they could be, but my questions truly they had never experienced curious questions without judgment or hidden innuendo or motive behind it. So we had to work through that experience to build trust, and for their nervous system to sort of tone down. And so in the questions related to the food in the refrigerator, or what the one person in that conversation knows now, it sounds like, was that was just a curious question, or an observation. Maybe it wasn't even a question, I don't think. You said, one person said, I didn't know there was X, Y, or Z in the refrigerator.
Yeah, it's just an observation.
Okay.
Like, so sort of talking out loud to yourself.
Yes. Oh, see, okay, that's also a thing.
Talking out loud.
We as ADHDers, and some other people too, narrate, right? We're just talking, making observations, and our partners or other people in our lives don't know or acknowledge or realize that we're not actually making suggestions. We're not making statements. We're just talking and processing. And so that's an ADHD awareness component that can be really important. So that's important in the workplace. It's important in friendships. It's important in really, intimate relationships as well. So noticing or knowing that we may be attaching labels to things that are not correct. So questions are actually a statement, or an observation, even more neutral. This is one person's, it's by definition, one person's view or perspective, right? An observation is just as individual as the person. So then we were looking at the feelings. So paying attention to the fact that there may be feelings labeled when they're actually just their beliefs. So some of us who may have beliefs about food waste, for example, I discovered a very different perspective, or that my partner and I had a very different perspective about food waste and experiences with leftovers. I thought this was sort of an innocuous thing, didn't know that it could be a big deal. And you're talking about leftovers obviously too. But there was one of us who grew up in a food scarce household, and one of us who did not. And there is this belief that I've known, or I'm not going to be anonymous because it's too hard for my brain. I'm the person who did not have scarcity with food, and learned over my ADHD. I did have a lot of waste beliefs though about food, about being wasteful, and that my parents forced us to finish everything on our plate. So we both had that experience. But the experience that he didn't have was this over the years cleaning out ridiculous science experiments from the refrigerator, because I left leftovers in the fridge because I didn't want to throw them away, fully knowing I was never going to actually eat them, but could not let myself throw them away. So then there was this I had to have this new awareness for myself about, oh, well, Renee, if you're not going to eat it, if you're going to eat it now, or eat it in the next 2 days or whatever, because if it goes past 3, I am certain it's going to kill me from salmonella or something. I have some food bacteria issues, so I just won't eat it, but I couldn't also throw it away. So anyway, so we kind of have to like have this awareness of ourselves and our own beliefs and values that might feed overreactions and or extreme reactions or perceived extreme reactions to things. So I think in that situation, so Chelsea, is there something that you could imagine could have or could be said that would acknowledge or clarify whether this is an attack or this is a curious question? Do you have any insights on how that might sound different or be handled in a way that's less confrontational?
What if it was, I just noticed that there was some leftover food in the refrigerator. I don't know, start it out differently, start the sentence differently.
Okay.
Maybe. I don't know, so that it doesn't sound, so it takes you off the defense from the very beginning somehow.
Okay. So if one person also knows that the other person might be naturally curious or wonder or be an observer, and they're not generally someone who gets upset about food getting eaten out of the refrigerator, then it could be, I guess this is harder because I'm trying to guess about the reasoning behind it, but I could imagine based on what you said that there could be these different thoughts about, I don't want to get in trouble for eating your leftovers and you're going to be upset with me about it. Like, is that something that's happened or a worry that's there?
It could be. Not in this instance. It was just like, oh, we have this here. And maybe in the past, there has been arguments about wasted food or whatnot on either side or whatever. And so maybe that's why it became a defensive topic.
Great. Yeah. So the question that I often have to ask myself and I teach my clients to ask is, what else could it be? So when we tend to lean toward a reactive response or a rejection response, if we know this about ourselves or we know this about someone else, if you start to notice some defensiveness and you may not know what it's from, but you just notice that, if we can, the most important piece about this is calming the automatic response. So noticing if our body is getting flushed, noticing if our heart rate is raising up, noticing if we're like changing our, like we're ready to lean in, if our body's language changes, if the tone of the other person changes, any of these things where you notice something shifting, that's our first clue, right? If we feel hot all of a sudden, or if our brain starts, spinning, those are clues that we're dysregulated. We may not know why yet, but we just have to notice that we are. So then in those moments, this is where we have to put that pause in, that creating space between the visceral reaction and anything we say or do next, because we've gotten instantly dysregulated, right? This is wired deep in us, an automatic for most of us at first. So we have to sort of slow that down. And that's where taking a few breaths, pausing, breathing, turning away even, so you're not physically like connected visually. So there's this sense of, you're disconnecting from any perceived confrontation. You may change your body language or move a little bit to sort of physically disconnect. Those are some ways that we can turn down the intensity of the emotional reaction and get that parasympathetic nervous system, that calming system back on board. Maybe it doesn't usually happen that quickly, but at least not go into full fight or flight or freeze. So it's sort of, again, turning down the volume and intensity of that reaction long enough so that we can think. Because when we're in dysregulation, our thinking brain goes away. We're just reacting at that point. We can't problem solve. We can't listen. We honestly cannot hear and comprehend information. Our body functions shut down. That's why many of us get upset stomachs, or we may end up ending up in the bathroom, to be quite explicit. Like, there's different things that happen to our bodies physiologically when we're under stress. So anyway, we need to get it calmed down again, and then we can think, and then we can ask questions like, what else could this mean? Could they have meant? What else could this be? And that's at first, because that's the goal, is to just get calmed down. The goal is to then later, the future goal for us when we get to this space is to stop those reactions first and ask the curious questions up front. So for example, Chelsea, in that situation, if there was one person, if you notice this is a pattern, or you've had fights about this before, or it's causing one of you distress, we have to get brave and ask questions that we're worried are going to create the rejection that we're worried about. But often we're actually answering questions and calming ourselves down and getting clarity or clarifying. So you can ask a question like, I know, it depends on what you want, or why there's an observation. So if somebody says, hey, I didn't know there was this in the refrigerator, and you have questions, it could be, were you wanting to have them for dinner? Or like, you could ask explicit questions to answer the what ifs in your head. And so it could be, you can figure out someone's intention instead of guessing. Because what we do is we make a lot of assumptions. We make a lot of assumptions. We jump to answers, we jump to meaning, we jump to thoughts that that haven't been challenged. So I'm going to pause on that example. There's a lot of other things we could go deeper into this, but this is really important to stop and look at any question that anytime you're asked a question and you feel attacked, that is powerful information for you to pause and ask curious questions. Why do I feel attacked? Was it the tone? Was it the look? Was it the word they said? And get curious with yourself, because you can't clarify any of this until you know that, like, notice it's happening, and then get curious about why. And you often might need to go back afterward. So you may not be able to do this in the moment. Most of us can't at first, because we're too dysregulated. So it's really important to go back to be curious about the situation. So if you find yourself upset, I had to get, the most important thing that I have learned for myself and help other people do is to be brave enough to clarify and to collect that positive or contrary positive evidence, because we're often wrong about the intention of the person on the other side. And it's not because we're like terrible readers of human behavior or any of those things. It's just they get mixed up. We get our wires crossed, and as protection, we may assign meaning to things inaccurately. So we can then think that I am a person. So one of my best friends, longest friends, been friends for over 30 years. I had a lot of rejection sensitivity experiences with her for many years, because she's has very strong beliefs about things, behaviors, and etiquette around things. And so there was lots of things about being late was disrespectful, and having questions made you look stupid. And there were all these things that she had been indoctrinated with from her own family of origin. And I was constantly feeling like, and I'd hear her make comments about other people. She didn't say that, she's a very kind and loving person, but every once in a while she would make statements that sounded very judgmental, and they are judgmental. And so then I thought, if she's thinking that about other people, she's thinking that about me. So it's often true, but it might not always be true. But what I would do in those moments is I would forget everything else I knew about her, or we often forget everything we know about a person and listen to the judgment in our head. So when we say that person's gonna stand me up at the movie theater, So I'm just not going to go because they're just going to stand me up. Instead of saying, or cancel last minute. If those of us who cancel last minute for anxiety reasons or for rejection sensitivity, we do that because we are sure that something's going to go wrong, or someone's going to be unhappy with the restaurant choice we picked, or the movie we want to see, or any of the, there's lots of reasons that we've told ourselves. But what we don't do is stop and say, is that person a person who would stand somebody up? Have they ever stood anybody else up? Have they ever stood me up before? So it's sort of reality checking. That's the calling BS on the beliefs, and reality checking our fears. And that is often so important. And it's basically, I realized that I'm a kind, compassionate, forgiving person, and I was judging other people unintentionally, or even my unawares of myself, when I say things like, they're going to be mean. They're going to, they're going to think I'm dumb, or they're going to think I'm not intelligent, or I don't know what I'm talking about. And I'll say to myself, okay, so now, like, has that person ever said anything like that about someone else? No, actually they haven't. Okay, so what are the chances they're going to say that about you? Very unlikely. But what if they think it? Like, that's my biggest thing I've overcome now is, right, I wanted to prevent anybody from even thinking these things about me, right? And we have to learn and embody that we absolutely do not have that control. We're not superheroes with superpowers that can control what people think, mind bend, and do any of that kind of stuff. So it's literally not possible. And I have had to get harsh with myself and say, it's not my problem. It's not my responsibility. It's not something I can control. I cannot control what people think about me. I'd like them to think positive things about me. So I'm going to be the best version of myself I can be. I'm going to be the best model and talk nicely and kindly about other people. I'm going to be vulnerable and authentic, but I can't protect myself from what other people are thinking. I can't prevent them having thoughts about me, and what they think and what they believe is not my business unless they bring it to me in a coaching conversation or a friend conversation, and ask for me to help them with it. Okay, so I took a lot longer on that example than I intended. We have only 3 minutes, so I'm sorry that I lost track of time on that one. I'm going to pause and look at the chat now. So I'm going to see if there's other. Beth, should I jump into other questions that aren't related to these examples, since I don't have more time for more?
Yeah, I mean, there's there were a couple. I don't know. The last thing you just said, it kind of worked really well for me. So I got not really distracted by it, but consumed by it.
Oh, okay.
The whole you can't control what people think. And I know it's really easy to spend time thinking about what people think. So I'm sorry. I was just trying to get myself right back where I am.
Sarah's question at the end is also maybe.
I was going to say, I like that one.
So yeah, that's what I started to allude to earlier. And maybe I don't see a timestamp. Oh yeah, I guess it was a couple minutes ago. So there's a disconnect. I'm just going to read it. So there is a disconnect with trying to follow my gut with people's intentions and being spot on, but ignoring it. But then there is misreading it too. Do you get what I mean? Absolutely, Sarah. This was the hallmark of my deep work on this, because I had learned, I now know that I have very deep intuition and accurate intuition about people, about intentions, about, I can read tone, I can read so much that's unspoken, and that not everybody else has that skill, which I didn't know that I had it, first of all, but I didn't know that it was as rare as it is to be accurate. And I am now, but I spent my experiences growing up and into young adulthood taught me to not trust my intuition. So I stopped listening to my intuition. I stopped trusting my gut. And I learned that actually it was so accurate that it was really threatening and scary for other people when I said what I said, or said what I believed, or said what I observed. And it wasn't that I was wrong. I was so right. It was very, very unsettling for the people on the other side. And so I had to do years of work to sort of go back and pay attention and relearn that those were actually accurate and that they were truly what gift I needed to embrace to do the work I do now. It made me perfectly skilled and ready to do this work. So that's one example of how this is where I had to start asking other people. And what I have challenged clients to do is to confront not in a truly confrontational way, but to face the things we're afraid of. And so by finding out if we're right or not. So when I read a text message that I have in my head says, "Ooh, are they mad at me? Or did I offend them the last time we talked?" I now have to stop and check. And when I first started this journey, and what I teach my clients to do is, this needs to be in safe environments first. So finding low risk people, even if we're perceived to be high risk, I help clients find low risk people, truly low risk people, through experience and examples. I'm the first one that's the low risk, so they get to practice with me. But the opportunity to challenge the thinking by looking for evidence that it's true or not true, depending on what we're saying to ourselves. So that piece helped me realize how often I was wrong. And I have experienced it with so many other people that I now believe it to be pretty true that we are wrong most of the time when it comes to some of these perceived rejections, especially. So that's when, I mean, there's the existential too, but other kinds of rejection. Anytime we're feeling rejection or rejection sensitivity, it can come from these repeated beliefs that we are reinforcing in ourselves and restating as fact. So we have to stop doing that first and then reframe or question those. And so I wrote a letter to my best friend and said all the things that I believed were true and sort of laid it all out there with her. And I mailed it to her. This was a long time ago. Mailed it to her. It was the beginning of my journey with ADHD, actually. So I was dealing with and addressing all of this stuff because it caused me so much distress that this person that I love so deeply, and I believed loved me too, I was spending so much time and energy ruminating over things I said or she said, things that she did or didn't do. And it was truly distressing. And there are some really extreme examples that I have heard in my own life and other people's lives where it gets to the point of even worrying about self-harm for some individuals to stop the pain. And there's other examples where we've had people who were calling crisis lines to get support because they're like, I don't know what's happening, but my thoughts are kind of getting scary to me. I don't know what's happening in here. I don't know I don't know what I'm going to do. So there can be those scary things when we repeat these stories over and over again so deeply that we believe them, and they create these deep emotional responses. So I think for all of us to think about how we expect and how we react to these comments or things that people say to us, we just have to pause and ask questions that help us slow down and put some reality to it. So checking with a friend and saying, hey, I read this message. Brene Brown taught in one of her books, she used this phrase that I use all the time now. My brain is telling me, I don't know if she says my brain, but I'm telling myself that you are angry with me because I left the ketchup on the counter. Is that true? And you are saying what you believe, you're owning, you're not telling them you are mad at me because I left the ketchup on the counter. We're acknowledging that there's a really good chance that what your brain is telling you isn't true. But you're also giving them the opportunity to say back to you whether that's right or wrong. And that often it only works if that person is also self-aware. So it can be a little challenging depending on who you're doing this with, but it can be a learned, practiced behavior, because once people realize how deeply painful the thoughts we have about what they think of us or what they're saying, may or may not be saying about us, they slow down and they can catch themselves, and they can start be better communicators with you. They can change their own tone. They can be aware and read your body clues. They can be participants in this conversation instead of you having this whole beginning, middle, and end all inside your head that's coming out of your body or in your tone or in your word choice that they have no idea what's happening. And they can be so confused, confounded, and harmed, wounded too by the things that we're saying or doing because they just don't get it. They don't understand. So we have to help them understand. And then they can help us reality check when we're wrong or learn to reality check. Okay.
My goodness. Renee, this was really good. Richard's got his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
We're running a little bit late, but you know, maybe if it's a quick one.
Richard, what we're gonna share.
Okay. So anyways, so I thought that I might be good at reading people, but I've learned that it's pretty much it's a learned response from all of our rejection, things like that, because as a high schooler, I was so immature that I never picked up on anyone's things that they were, expressing to me, saying to me, anything like that. And I would just be so oblivious to what they're saying. The second thing I would say is that, slipping. Oh no, it's slipping away. Unfortunately, that even if you're a good reader of someone's face, it doesn't help if your communication style is to over explain, over talk, basically, whereas some people are more they're more listening, things like that. So whenever my wife and I are talking about something stressful, she'll clam up and I just keep trying to talk and fill the space and everything like that. And so that gets us into trouble as well. Like, even if you're a good reader, it doesn't help that you're now going to try and talk your way to smooth things over, because it's just not going to happen,
Yeah.
if you don't have the same communication style.
Exactly. And, what you were just describing is another example of how we can often assume, again, that the silence, you could read that silence a lot of different ways, or not even notice it, right? If you're a verbal processor, as I clearly am, if you hadn't noticed, and we could be talking out loud and talking through something, but then there's many of us who are really uncomfortable with the silence. So then we can fill it. So that's why there are people who interrupt other people or over talk. So it's hard. Some of us read into that silence and make meaning out of silence. So when we learn that that's a trait or a challenge of us as an ADHD individual that's super uncomfortable with silence, then we can get curious about why. What do we think that silence means? Because we'll fill it with some underlying beliefs we may not even be aware of, like or we're processing. Like you also said, Richard, there's times that we're just processing. There could be all kinds of reasons why we continue to talk. Or like for me, being super excited about something, many of us, can go into the monologue unintentionally if we have a special interest we're talking about, or if we're nervous, or any of those, in just extreme feelings. Or if we feel judged, we're going to continue to talk because we don't want the other person to have a chance to say something mean or hurtful to us, so we can just continue to talk. That's happened. Other people do that too. So anyway, there's lots of reasons that we can struggle with that. And I love your facts, statistics in the chat, Richard. I just saw that. Yeah, it's really important that we honestly, I want to tell you that the risks, the fear that comes with this, I guess, a gentle challenge to you to ask for clarification when you believe something to be true, and not before you even start making stories. Catch the stories from happening and then ask for clarification. And that can happen in print, in emails, it can happen in text messages, it can happen in conversations, and then just be quiet if we can and listen and be open and relaxed about the response without an assumption of what's going to come back at us. Because when we're commonly feel attacked, we come with a defense energy. So the person, whether they're aware of why or not, they're going to read that defensive energy and react in response to it, whether they're aware of it consciously or not. So there's a lot of human automatic behaviors that happen that we're trying to counteract. So anyway, it's deep kind of social emotional awareness, but there are strategies that can help. So anyway, this is a topic that we could talk for like 500 hours about.
Oh, no kidding. Couple people have asked for you to come back. So,
Okay, I'd love
could
to.
you put in the chat how people maybe your contact information?
Oh yeah, I had that slide up and then I just put it right back
Yeah,
down
you
earlier.
put it in the chat, and if anybody misses it, I'm happy to give it out too. And you can always find her if you search on Renee's name, and her business is Added Perspective Coaching. She's got a great website, lists all the different topics that she's been studying over the years. So check that out too.
You can also text me. That's the fastest way to get a hold of me if you want to ask a question or check in or make an appointment. If I'm not available, it will be silenced, so you can never wake me up or disturb me by sending me a text message.
And she's also a Seattle Chad adult support group leader on the third Thursday of each month. So
yeah, if nothing else, just come
you can
find me.
get more over there. And sometimes in our support groups, we touch on the topic that we covered at the expert speaker meeting. So it's a great place to jump off and run wild.
And if there's anybody, if I didn't check the chat, but if there's anything specific around this that you would like to be delved into deeper, like I've done talks on rejection sensitivity in relationships and how it impacts different types of relationships. There's, in friendships or in the workplace or whatever, or if there's some aspect of it that felt unclear or you wanted more in depth, I would be more than happy to kind of focus another conversation or another presentation on that specifically. So, or I can point you to resources around that aren't me.
Very cool. Renee, thank you so much. That was actually one of the most fun talks on rejection sensitivity I've ever seen. I mean, I've saw people smiling. I saw you smiling. It was very cool. Very, very
I
cool.
didn't use as much humor and stories as I would have liked because I got a little in my head about a few things, but hopefully, it was enjoyable.
The stories bring their own humor.
You're so welcome, Sarah. Yeah, I
It's
appreciate
great.
and your examples and your vulnerability in the chat to kind of share things. And then also, Chelsea's not here anymore, but thank you so much, Chelsea.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Is it Denisa or Denisa?
Yeah, Denise. Yeah.
Denisa, you're very welcome. I appreciate you guys and thanks for all your wonderful comments. I'm going to save the chat so I can read over what I didn't pay attention to or notice because yeah, anyway. Okay. Thank you all so much. And thanks for your time. Sorry I ran over.
You guys have a good evening and a good weekend, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
You as well. Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.